dapatkan sektor itu adalah sektor awam. Penubuhan padu seperti yang kita telah sebut berkali-kali adalah strategi ke arah melaksanakan GovTech, kerana padu adalah hub pengkalan data berpusat kerajaan dan ini akan menjadi satu komponen utama kepada GovTech. So if you have followed our workflow in the last 1 year, while each of the initiative may seem to be in isolation, it was within the overall framework of towards GovTech. And we cannot be talking about GovTech if you do not have a very good centralized database. And that's why among the first decision that we did was on a centralized database. So now Padu is already coming to fruition. That's why now is an opportune time for the government through Mampu and all the related ministries to start planning and rolling out GovTech phase by phase, version by version. Tahap keteperincian seperti ini memerlukan perancangan yang rapi di peringkat kerajaan dan ia juga bermakna kita perlu membina kapasiti kepimpinan kita. You have a plan, you are beginning to build the infrastructure, but obviously we need the human capital to be able to see this through. Not just from the perspective of GovTech, one requirement of any government in the world, in today's digital world, is the ability of the public service and policy makers to be able to understand fully digital and tech. Because we cannot have a situation where the public service, not only because we have to implement GovTech, but we have to implement policies to facilitate the growth of digital and tech, and at the same time to be able to foresee the blind spots of technology so that we can regulate better. There needs to be a balance between the rush into technology with the unintended consequences that may come from technology. And Malaysia wants to lead in this region and working with our partners to make sure that we have our own assessment, our own views, and we are able to manage this transition into the digital and tech world better than perhaps what we have done in the past. Oleh sebab itu, kohort pertama, program kepimpinan digital eksekutif, Executive Digital Leadership, ia telah dibangunkan oleh ASB dengan penyertaan 5 syarikat tech gergasi dunia, IBM, Google, Microsoft, Amazon Web Services dan juga Shopee. Program dan perancangannya ini telah bermula sejak saya ingat 5 bulan yang lepas, dan ini adalah batch pertama, kohort yang pertama, dan alhamdulillah kohort ini bermula minggu ini 14 November 2023 dan terdiri daripada 55 orang peserta, dengan 35 daripada mereka datang dari sektor awam dan 20 lagi daripada sektor swasta, dan kita ada satu penyertaan daripada negara Oman juga. Dan untuk kohort-kohort yang akan datang, saya telah pun dimaklumkan insya-Allah kita akan ada penyertaan daripada kepimpinan sektor awam daripada negara-negara antarabangsa, kerana program ini pada makluman saya adalah yang pertama yang diwujudkan di rantau ini. So the whole idea of the EDL is that while the government develop the framework, begins to implement GovTech phase by phase, we also need to prepare the leadership, not just from the public sector, but also from the private sector, um, um, so that the transition and the progress in our digital and tech will be managed efficiently, and is the first of its kind done by government. Is the first of its kind in this region, and I would like to take this opportunity to also thank Jabatan Perkhidmatan Awam, just to share with the media. Usually it's very difficult to get a decision on something like this, because this involves policies. Civil service training and content development, career progression is governed tightly by a set of rules and a set of programs. And usually it is managed internally. So when we were planning for this 4 or 5 months ago, one of the concerns is that whether or not we would have enough time to get that endorsement and decision making from the government, because we do require middle level and senior level civil service to come and take them off 3 months of their work for this full time. And you know, it's normally we thought that this is going to be a big challenge. That's why I want to mention specifically our appreciation for GPA especially, because it was done and the decision was arrived very promptly, and if anything, it gives me as the minister in charge the comfort that the government is going full speed ahead with digitalization. Because in the past, usually plans are plans, but when it comes to trying to translate it into action, then you are bound by so many regulations here and there. If anything, the fact that 4 months after we first conceptualize it, we now have the first cohort is oversubscribed, and we have a good split between private and public sector, and ASB has assembled really good programs for the next 3 months. I'm hopeful that we will be able to see a faster transition towards digital and tech in public service and in private sector as well. So as we move closer into 2024 and onwards, we will announce progress on GovTech bit by bit, including what's the first phase, what kind of services and digital interaction that will be rolled out first. And I'm hoping that within a year, Malaysian public can feel a vast difference in dealing with government through GovTech and through a faster pace of digitalization. Any questions?
So what is your target actually? I mean, this time you said within a year kan? So bermakna 2026 lah expected ke macam mana? 25?
Tak. I think the announcements will be made usually by the Prime Minister in phases. What I can share is this. The conceptual paper for the timeline and the scope and phasing will be presented to M10 in the first week of December. That will allow governments to plan, and we will have our roadmap. And as always, roadmap usually will be able to identify which key areas first, which key services first, and it will be done in phases. But we are hoping that even sometime, in matters of months in 2024, the first upgrade digital service will be able to be rolled out. I know, I mean, it's easy for me to say because Mampu will be able to pull this off. But we've proven with Padu. We had the decision in May 2023. By October, is already 70% ready. And in January, it will be able to go live. So I know that sometimes, every time I make comments like this, I look at my colleagues from civil service, because the timeline is usually always in matters of months, because it's not like you do everything and you roll out everything at one go. Digital services are done in tranches and in phases. It's iterations, So the roadmap, the government will consider, and the government will decide how we are going to go about this phase by phase. Obviously, it will take over a space of a few years, because we also have to balance with building the capacity internally. If you remember, Padu was carried out by civil service completely 100% by internal talents. It's a challenge that we throw to our public service, that you can actually do this without appointing contractors or vendors. But at the same time, we also have to match the upskilling and expansion of their capacity and technical resources. And that's why EDL is key to this as well. So everything has to happen in parallel. But I'm hoping that, as I say, sometime in 2024, I cannot tell yet, because let's wait for M10 to decide. We will start seeing how government services are being digitalized and then being rolled out for interface bit by bit, phase by phase.
Hi, good afternoon. YB, you mentioned about the digitalized, right? So for the normal people, like ordinary people, how can they feel the digitalizations of the government? For the normal people, you see, is it go to the local government there, they can feel anything that transform in digitalization? Thank you.
Yeah. Of course, the thought process of doing this, the government will identify which services have the most touch points with the public. As you consolidate and integrate and roll out interface with the public, we will focus on the ones which has most touch points first. The ones that has most touch points, obviously, will have the highest adoption. And that's why the phasing and the identification will be done, but the philosophy is that. And then naturally, those transactions with government at the federal level agencies, those ones are easier to do because it's within the jurisdiction of the federal government. As we roll this out, obviously, then you have to bring in the services at the state level, at the local council level, but all this will have to happen in phases. But I would imagine, even from 1st January 2024, when Padu is open to public for validation, the public can already see a major change in dealing with government. Because for the first time, the public is able to go into government database, see and validate their information, update their information, and that information becomes fundamental reference points for government in how to direct assistance, offer programs, and so on. So as we roll out, products by products, because I look at it from the perspective of products and features. We will decide what products to go first, what features to go first, which services. But I think the public will constantly see that more and more transactions and dealings with government will be consolidated digitally.
Avi, can I ask another question?
Sure.
Okay. It's regarding...
I'm in a good mood, so it's okay.
Okay. That's great. Do you think that we should review the anti-party hopping law for the recently development?
Whether we should review or not?
Yes.
We haven't had the discussion at cabinet. I have to admit that since then. I think the onus is actually for the parties, because the loopholes exist for those parties that didn't amend their constitution. So, the discussion and consensus for the current anti-hopping law actually went through months, and this is the best compromise that all the parties had, and that's why you got this. To me, the loophole is because parties such as Bersatu, unlike those parties in PH, did not amend the party's constitution that if an MP goes against the whip, that constitutes resignation from the party. If this had happened from among PH, that's not a problem, because the respective constitution has already addressed that loophole. Because during the negotiation last 2 years, leading up to the drafting, PH has always said there is a loophole. But Bersatu was the one who say, they prefer to leave open like that, because Tan Sri Muhyiddin cited his experience that he was sacked by UMNO for what he think was a moral decision, which I suppose at that time, I wasn't involved in the negotiation. I suppose at that time it was also a compelling argument then. So the fix that PH had done, which was not taken up by Bersatu, was fair enough. If that's the case, then we have to respectively amend our constitution. I suppose it's better to focus on that first, because the moment we open up for an amendment or revision of anti-hopping law now, you don't know how long it will take, because it wasn't easy to get consensus in the first place. And at least personally, what I feel is the country needs focus. And the focus should be on development plans, navigating the economy given the global backdrop. And I would prefer that we lessen any polemics, especially political polemics. Going into that, opening up again, actually will drag months and months and months of more discussion, when it can be done independently by all the parties. Anything else? Yeah.
Speaking on the BN's pre-campaign material book that's been circulating right now, so are you aware of such book? And since BN has yet to deny or confirm this matter, so what is your call to your BN colleagues?
Well, I'm not aware, and I don't think that it's tit for tat like that, because if we want to go into the past and start digging tit for tat like that, the kind of things that past has said about BN, about Bersatu, is no end to it. I think we were in a unique, junction of history as an outcome of the last general election. The wishes of the public is for political parties to focus. There's no end to trying to compare what did you talk behind my back, what did you say previously. And when the parties in the unity government decided to take heed of Yang di-Pertuan Agong's request, it comes as a package. And it means that whatever our differences, it's something that we have to put aside, because the focus on the country is most important. This country needs focus and needs stability. So, and I would say the same thing to the media as well. Of course, you will get your clicks, but I don't think it really helps the country. Well, I mean, if you were to go like that, I think you are better off going and write stories about Tun Mahathir. Because Tun Mahathir has gone through so many phases. You know, if you track what Tun Mahathir said in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, there's no end to it. And that was the spirit, at least I think in PH, when we sat down with Bersatu towards 2018. If the focus is nation building, if the focus is, you know, the greater good for society, certain things have got to go. And I think that's just part and parcels of politics. I don't think anyone in the unity government would want to spend too much time settling scores. And that's I think the attitude that I take. That's why I don't. You notice I hardly comment about politics nowadays. We have a challenging 2023. We have an opportunity in 2024 to strengthen whatever fundamentals, hoping that the global economy picks up in 2025. And as far as I'm concerned, at least for PKR, we have always wanted to be given an opportunity for reform. And we have about 5 years to do that. And it's given, is up to other parties if they want to downgrade themselves into bickering about what did you say about me last time. But I don't think that helps society. So it's a reminder to myself over and over again that our job as a minister and in government is to really focus on big picture. Anything else? Yeah.
On the Q4 pula, going forward.
That's too quick. No, I mean, I mean, anyone in my position, if you can empathize, will give a sigh of relief the fact that we show a year-on-year growth of 3.3%. And to me, I've mentioned this in the past, I think, that I don't necessarily just look on year-on-year growth. I also look on quarter-to-quarter growth, because ever since the pandemic, if I can recall correctly, the country has never had 3 consecutive quarter-to-quarter growth. It's quite volatile. You have the first quarter, I mean, when I say first quarter, I don't necessarily mean the first quarter of the year, but the first quarter that it registers growth compared to the previous quarter. You may have the second one, but usually the third one, it comes down again. Because to me, quarter-to-quarter growth is an indication of the resilience and the momentum for recovery. For quarter 3, that we have 3.3 year-on-year growth is a sigh of relief. But I'm very encouraged that the quarter-to-quarter growth, quarter 3 compared to quarter 2, is even higher than the previous quarter-to-quarter growth. I think it's about 2.3. I don't want to comment too much about what to expect in quarter 4, to be frank, because I really have to see what's happening in October and the most data that we would have had by now is October. So it's quite premature for me to comment on quarter four. But of course, we are hoping that we can keep up the momentum, and if the quarter-on-quarter growth continues, if we see better year-on-year growth, the focus is to be able to hit the target of 4% thereabout. What I think is most important for the government is not so much about what is the prospect for quarter four, is about what can we do to make sure that this momentum continues. There are certain decisions or certain impetus that are in our control. For example, what's within Ministry of Economy's purview is to make sure that we improve project delivery, because if you can see quarter three, despite a drop in export and weak external demands, we are able to keep at 3.3 because of strong domestic demand. And that strong domestic demand is from private spending, is also from government spending. So what I hope to be able to focus and get things better in quarter four and in next year is, number one, to make sure that project delivery is much more improved, so that whatever the allocation that has been approved, it gets implemented very quickly within the cost and within the time. And that will allow for us to maintain the kind of public spending efficiency that will translate into better growth. The other perspective is also, of course, the balance for inflation, because public spending, private consumption will be a tricky bit if it has an impact on pushing inflation up. We have not seen that so far in our economy. Private spending continues to grow and continues to drive demands, but we have been able to lower inflation and keep it at 1.9% for September. So the laser focus on inflation is also important, because the moment you start seeing an adverse impact on inflation, then the other considerations have to come in. We are able to, as a country, we are able to keep interest rate at 3%, which is among the lowest in this region, and that, of course, obviously also help private consumption as well. So those are, to me, what are more important, while we continue to build up the growth narratives that the government has unveiled bit by bit. From, we have sectoral blueprints like NETA for energy transition, NIMP for new industrial master plan. We have the long-term, mid-term review, and digital and tech sectoral blueprints will come in the first quarter of 2024. All this, to me, are what are more important than basically trying to see how the next quarter will be, and so on. Okay, thank you very much. You better leave early because it's Friday and it's going to be jammed. Yeah. No, I'm off WhatsApp. Good luck trying to get. For someone